What's up, everybody? Welcome into ESPNFC. I'm Dalen Cuff alongside Don Hutchison. We got a great show coming up for you. Chelsea and Wrexham. Yes, Wrexham are playing tonight on ESPN. We'll preview that, talk about the Blues and some issues they have as Pochettino gets ready to start their preseason. Obviously, the latest transfer news, Rob Dawson, James Oley would join us. And we start the conversation, though, with Man United, who took on Lyon, won 1-0 earlier today. Don was on the call for that. Don, let's start right there. We know that hearing you on the call, actually, you became a philosopher too. What was it? What'd you say? Jeopardy brings intensity. You were dropping some
deep.
Deep. Yeah, I had to do a double take. I was typing something on my computer. I was like, "Was that Don? What the hell?"
So
was
did
that? I know you did, and you brought it back in the second half, and that's when I was able to actually take note of it. When you look back at United's performance, they came out kind of flying. A number of chances, didn't score till in the second half by or 1-0 volley there by Van de Beek. What did you assess from United there in that first game?
Yeah, Dalen, I think the takeaway from preseason games is what's the mentality and what's the school of thought from Laurent Blanc, the Lyon manager, and Erik Ten Hag, the Man United manager. Two different styles. I mean, Ten Hag's team come out the traps really well. I mean, Hannibal was their star player in midfield for the first 20 minutes or so, and then I think some good young players then I think caused Erik Ten Hag just to maybe rethink on what he might be doing with some of his personnel in the next coming weeks, months. But then he made lots of changes. He changed the whole team at halftime, where Laurent Blanc didn't change anyone till the hour mark. So two different schools of thought, but they played really well, Man United. It was interchanging up front, some good performers. Hannibal was the star player. I still want to see more, I think, from Anthony. He was making the same mistakes he was making last season, where he'd do a little bit of skill and then give the ball away. Jadon Sancho looked particularly bright. But overall, for the first 45 minutes, when he had, I say this very loosely, his first team out, they played some really good football.
You mentioned Hannibal. He came coming back, was on loan, young guy, I believe 21 years old, on loan at the championship last year. Will he be able to factor in this squad? Will he be able to? Will we see him when we hit the season starts in the second week of August?
Well, that's a great question, because what you can do as a young player, you can play well and you can try and force yourself into the conversation when you have that with Erik Ten Hag. And I said that on comms today. It's interesting, I think, for a young player like Hannibal, as you said, who was on loan last season. Phil Foden's a great sort of example, where I think 3 or 4 years ago, I was saying, well, Phil Foden should go on loan. But Guardiola then didn't, and he made him learn off the likes of David Silva and Gundogan and all the star players, and it benefited him doing it that way, where some managers and some players like to get the young players out on loan. So I think it's one of them, Dalen. I think Hannibal sits down in front of Erik Ten Hag, you can try and get a good indication, and it's a good gauge when you're having an eye-to-eye conversation. What's the plans for me? And if the manager says, well, you can fight for your place, and there's a place for you here to fight for, then I think you stay. If the indication is, well, we think you might be better off going on loan for another year, then that's when you think, right, I'll go on loan for another year. But he couldn't have done much more in terms of his performance today. He was very impressive.
It's funny you mentioned Foden. I remember covering one of these preseason games in Miami, probably about 4 years ago. I think they're playing Real Madrid, and talking to him before the game, he was very much excited about the opportunity. And I think I left that interview being like, dude, you got to go out and loan. This isn't going to work out. But he found his way, and that, needless to say, he's one of the best players in the Premier League right now. Big news with Rashford re-signing, big deal, over $300,000 a week he's going to be on, but he stays with United. But they still have a concern, and you guys talked about on the broadcast, that number 9 position. Sancho played through the middle here in this match. Yeah. What they have to find another number 9 in the market immediately?
I have to. If they are seriously trying to compete or trying to get closer to Man City, while across the road Erling Haaland's banging in 50 goals a season, they can't rely on Marcus Rashford. Marcus Rashford's best season was last season in terms of his numbers. Can he replicate that? Maybe. He might drop off 5 goals, but that's to be expected. So I think what Ten Hag has to do, in my opinion, he has to find a number 9, and a number 9 that's going to guarantee him 20 goals a season. Well, that's not easy, because they don't come cheap, and I'm not particularly sure how much money Man United have got to spend, unless they can try and sell, 2 or 3 players like maybe McTominay, maybe Fred, maybe Harry Maguire, to generate that money. Or you can try and go the other way, the sort of Moneyball style, where you can try and get 10 goals out of Mason Mount. You can try and get 10 goals out of Jadon Sancho, another 10 off Anthony. So that's maybe the area that he's looking in. But if they are seriously trying to compete with Man City, they can't do it without signing a number 9.
With that said, let's bring in Rob Dawson now to kind of sift through some of these transfer talk. Rob, great to have you on the show here. Let's just start right there. What could be some of those potential targets? Because the budget is an issue. They spent about 60 million on Mason Mount, about 60 million on Andre Onana, who we'll talk about in a minute, who's coming in, a goalkeeper from Inter Milan. What is left, and who could be some targets?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right that a number 9 is absolutely vital this summer. I mean, the guy that they really want is Harry Kane. But you mentioned the budget there. They just haven't got the money to go and put a bid in that Tottenham would look at. And it looks like he might end up at Bayern Munich. When you move down a level below Kane, you're looking at players like Rasmus Højlund at Atalanta, Kolo Muani at Eintracht Frankfurt. And when you look at someone like Højlund, he's a great young player, lots of potential, 20 years old, but hasn't scored that many goals. I think last season he scored 9 Serie A goals. So when you're looking at young players like that, yes, you get a little bit more value for money, but it's a much bigger risk when you're looking at someone like Harry Kane. He's a guaranteed Premier League goal scorer. Rasmus Højlund may come in, he may do very well. He may turn into the next Erling Haaland, but it is a big risk. There's no guarantee when you sign anyone, and when you sign a young player for big money, it is a risk. And unfortunately for United, because of the budget restrictions, that's the kind of area, that's the kind of market that they're looking at the moment.
Yeah, they are looking at that. And I mentioned the budget now. Onana comes in, and Don, you talked about it on the broadcast a little bit. De Gea leaves after 12 years, and it seems like that'll be Onana's job. He's doing his medical this morning, I believe, and he should catch up with the team at some point in the States here as they go through their tour. What does he offer in terms of solidifying that goalkeeper position?
Oh, he's a first-class goalkeeper. And I think under Erik Ten Hag, the way Ten Hag wants to play, obviously his goalkeepers need to be good with the ball at their feet. He is one of the best out there. I mean, I've watched him a lot for Inter. I've seen him a lot at Ajax. Obviously, Ten Hag knows him well. But it's his range of passing. He's very comfortable passing into a holding midfield player, whether that be Casemiro. But his range of passing, he can even miss Casemiro out and drop it into a front man or spray it out wide to wide men like maybe Anthony or Jadon Sancho. So his range of passing is very, very good, along with being an excellent goalkeeper. He commands his box well. So I think that moves the needle for Man United in terms of where they're trying to go in the style that they want to play in, because the Ten Hag way is playing out from the back, where I feel a little bit for David De Gea because he was there 12 seasons, and the majority of the seasons, especially early on when Man United was struggling, I think I could be stand corrected, but I think he got something like, player of the season about 4 times in a row. That tells you how particularly bad Man United were, but how good he was at the same time. But the last 3 or 4 months of the season, he almost played himself out of signing a new deal. He made some high-profile errors in the Premier League, definitely made some high-profile errors in European football for Man United. So this, for me, I think it's an upgrade.
Yeah, it was stunning that the Man United goalkeeper was player of the year, but as you mentioned, it happened a number of times. That was more indicative of the struggles at Old Trafford as a club. Rob, when do you think we would see Onana joining the team? And are there other moves they may make that aren't as big as the number 9, or are there other things that they may need to do to shore up their roster?
Yeah, well, I mean, Onana now is a matter of time. He's at Carrington now, having his medical. The hope is that he might be on the flight to New York to train with the squad in New Jersey ahead of that game against Arsenal on Saturday night. If he doesn't make that, he'll travel to San Diego and be part of the team, the squad that trains there, and possibly make his debut against Real Madrid in Houston. So that essentially that deal is done. The other moves are interesting, really. Beyond the number 9 that they desperately need. Don is right that he said earlier that the rest of the summer will depend on how much money they can raise through departures. Maybe Harry Maguire goes, maybe Scott McTominay goes. If they can raise a little bit of money that way, then maybe we might see them try and sign an additional midfielder. Another interesting point from the Lyon game today was that Johnny Evans was back. Obviously, he left Leicester at the end of the season. He's been training at Carrington. Ten Hag has been impressed with what he saw, has given him a short-term deal to cover these pre-season games. United privately are saying that they're not ruling anything out with him, that possibly he could sign a longer deal, possibly for the coming season, spend a year at Old Trafford as a backup to Varane and Martinez. And if that were to happen, that really would cast a massive doubt on the future of Harry Maguire. Everyone will know that he's not really played that much at United last season. He's had the captaincy stripped. If they were looking to bring Johnny Evans in for next season, there really wouldn't be a place for Harry Maguire. Then when you talk about that, it's where he could possibly go. He's on a big wage at Man United. United would want a fee. It's very, very difficult for Man United to ship these players out. And how they do that between now and the transfer deadline may affect what else they can do in the market in terms of bringing players in.
I think when I first heard that Johnny Evans was going to be signed a short-term deal, I literally said, Johnny Evans? Like, I could not believe we're going back in time here. Rob, that has to mean Maguire's got to leave at this point. At some point, Harry Maguire has to say, That is basically a direct slap in the face. Is he going to finally exit stage right?
I mean, I think that the message from Man United with Maguire is that it's going to be his decision. You know, Ten Hag feels that he needs 4 top-class centre-halves. That's how you go through a season with multiple games in competitions like the Champions League and the domestic cups. But his first choice is at centre-half is clearly Martinez and Varane. And so if you're Maguire and looking at that, you're wondering where these games are going to come from. He's got a choice. He can either sit it out at Man United. He's got time left on his contract. As I said, he's on a great wage. Or he can say, well, I need to go and play games. I need to play games to keep my place in the England squad. And maybe I do, take a pay cut and go and join West Ham or maybe Tottenham. Ultimately, it's going to be his decision on what his ambition is. In the past, we've seen players just sit it out at Man United on these big contracts. Other players have had a little bit more ambition than that and said, no, I'm not going to stay here. I need to play games. I need to play regularly. I've got ambition to play for my country and move on under their own steam. Ultimately, it's going to be Harry Maguire's decision. If he wants to leave, he will be able to leave.
Don, let's get the player's perspective. I did learn a little tidbit about you today. 11 clubs through 17 years you guys discussed on the broadcast. So I may know where you're going here. If you're Maguire, are you leaving?
I think you have to. I mean, it would be a bit of a wrench, but at the same time, I think you've got to have the ability to read the room. And as I said before, we're talking about Hannibal having the conversation with Ten Hag. Harry Maguire's got to have the same conversation. And if there's an indication that he can fight for his place and stay, then you try and stay. But I think the indication from his minutes last season, he only played, I think, just under 800 minutes last season. So you've got to try and have the ability to read the room and go, well, do you know what? I tried my best here. I played some good football. I made some errors, but you park them errors as quick as possible. And then you try and look for a new club, and you've got to go and play football. If it's West Ham, if it's Tottenham, they'll all be getting a really good centre-back. Where I think I felt sorry for Harry Maguire, I think, and I said it on comms today, it doesn't mean you're a bad defender because again, I'll say this loosely because I never like to use the word fail, but he failed at Man United. But when you looked at Harry Maguire's style of play at Leicester when they won the league, he was a defender that played on the edge of his 18-yard box. And they serviced Riyad Mahrez, they had Kante in midfield, and everything about Leicester at the time was over the top towards Jamie Vardy. So Harry Maguire and his back four defended on the edge of the 18-yard box. But when you go to a place like Man United, you're expected to be 25 yards higher up the pitch and closer to the halfway line. That takes Harry Maguire into territory he doesn't really want to be in because he's not quick enough.
Thank you very much for watching ESPN FC on YouTube. For more highlights, analysis and exclusive content, be sure to subscribe.